Hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk about Nebosh. Nebosh is a safety course. In Nebosh, it's called IGC, that is International General Certificate. If someone wants to do the course, right, there are about 9 topics that you have to do. But first of all, I'm going to talk about IGC 1, which is called Element1. In the topic Element1 is talking about workplace hazard and risk control. I'm going to explain everything about workplace hazard and risk controls, right? So if you need this material also, you can contact me below. First of all, I have to talk about welfare. When we're talking about welfare, we're talking about the employer, right? An employer can be either a government or a private employer or a public employer, right? Employer have the responsibility to ensure that workers have access to what? Adequate supplies of water, right? Then adequate and separate sanitary convenience for men and women, and washing facility with hot or cold waters, showers or bath, showing also how to provide wherever the natures of the work is particularly strenuous or dirty, or there is a risk of contamination of skins from harmful or offensive substance. Then also, employers should provide a suitable and sufficient secure lockers for clothes which is not worn during working hours, and spread and special work cloth such as overall, uniform, terminal cloth, and also hats worn for food hygiene and purpose, right, etc. Separating changing rooms for men's and women's should also be available for workers who need to wear special clothes and PPE for work, right? This basically means that as an employer, right, he should provide lockers if they are working in certain factories or a certain organization. They have to provide a locker for people, right? So this locker, you put your personal equipment there. This simply means that if you have your purse or other equipment or other materials or items, you can keep it in your locker. Like for instance, like some of these factories who are using, like, you have a separate cloth that you have to use before entering that facility, right? So we have a changing room where you can change your clothes which you wear to their own normal dress. So there should be facility for that one. That one is called welfare, right? Then we're talking about the employer also should provide clear eating facility and resting area away from normal work location, particularly for pregnant or nursing mother. So this simply means that also the employer also should provide like the eating place, the cafeterias, right, where people, staffs, they will go to take their lunch or their food, you understand. So this is also talking about the in a workplace, it's talking about the welfare. Then I'm going to talk about working environments. Working environment have a responsibility that the employer have the responsibility to ensure that worker have access to what? The worker should have access to sitting areas, yeah, with adequate backrest, should be stable and adjust to meet the needs of an individual worker. So this simply means that in safety environment, they should have a place where people will sit, and that chair should be comfortable in the sense that chair should have adjustment, like some offices, right? Rather than being stand still like this, or they have to provide a very comfortable chair. At least you can able to relax, as you can see those modern chair, right? So because some of the chairs people use windows in some certain offices can lead to back pain, can be harmful to human being, right? So those are the hazards we are talking about. Also, we're talking about suitable ventilations from windows and machinery and ventilation system, which are regularly cleaned and tested as maintained. So this simply means that also the employer should provide good ventilation. Ventilation means that the windows in this facility should be also good, and also the AC system also should be all the time. They should need to clean it because of toxic and pollution, right? So people will be open up to get a fresh air, to get a nice air, a nice smell, right? Then we're talking about in a work environment, a comfortable temperature, right? They should have a comfortable temperature, and also they should have a suitable and sufficient light to work by from a natural source, so far as is reasonable, and practically or by means of artificial lighting. So this simply means that in every offices they should have a proper light of system, right? So like if someone is working in computers or doing writing work, at least the place should be clear. There should be facility of lighting system which cannot affect them, right? Then another topic, we're talking about explosion. Exposure to extreme of temperature. When you're talking about exposure to extreme of temperature, prolonging the exposure to extreme heat, that is founding hydrations and muscular cramp, heat and stress and heat strokes, colds, that is cold stores, hypothermia, and also talking about sleep and hazard, can also lead to burn from contacting with hot or cold surface, fatigues, generally slow of reaction and loss of detoxify, and affecting both workers' efficiency and the possibility of making mistake, which can also lead to accidents. So this simply means that whenever the staffs, the employees exposed to lots of heat, stress and other things, that can also be expanded or be exposed to accidents, right? So let's say sometimes if the place where you are working, there are a lot of heat there, right? This place can make the person feel upset, and it can also lead to fainting, right? So we are talking about a very good area which is not prone to temperature. Temperature can either be more high or more cold areas, right? Then also we're talking about exposure to an extreme of temperature can also be due to working with a difficult environment factors, that is high windy can cause a wind chilling factors now, and slips and hailstone, heavy driving rain, outside working during a very warm weather. So these are also things that can create a high temperature. Then we go to the point of the primary focus of preventive measures, where the needs to work in an extremely temperature cannot be eliminated, is to prevent the ill effects of exposure by using an engineering and the process control that limits the exposure, that is task rotation, or providing a protection and alleviating the effects of ventilations or insulation or protective cloth. So this simply means that if you are working in a place where it is exposed to more heat or more cold, at least there should be an PPE. This is personal protective equipment that you should give to these people. Or in that area which is more exposed to temperature, you have to make the work for rotation. If you know that people can able to endure for 1 hour, 2 hours, so it should be an rotation process, you know, because one person working in that temperature area can lead to accidents. All what we are saying is what are the preventive measures that you're supposed to take, right, in a high temperature area, right? Then we're talking about that topic, talking about preventions of fall materials. When we're talking about prevention of fall material, we talk about safe staking and store, right? How you can prevent something from falling on someone. It also can lead to accident. You say in a workplace, workplace can also become untidy if housekeeping is not managed. Spoil herbs and peels of new materials, debris and waste can also accumulate very quickly and can 1. hinder or prevent safe movement of pedestrian and vehicle around that workplace. So let's say if a place is very dirty, right, or this street is very dirty, it can prevent people from not moving from one place to another also, right, or even in a workplace, right? And then blocking of light and access to essential service such as fire equipment. In some instances, stake and peels of materials can present an immediate danger of collapse. Stakes materials in a particularly can topple over if they are not staked correctly. So this simply means that whenever they have material that is an unwanted material, they should not put it closer to the fire extinguisher or should not block the lights where there is lights, right? So you should have a separate stores where they should pack every unwanted or material that is not using at that particular time, right? So it cannot create another further accident, because all what we are looking at is the preventive measures, right? Then we're talking about good housekeeping starts with designing and layout of a workplace, right? So designing and layout of a workplace, storage areas should be clean and defined with separate areas used for different items. Then other one also say certain materials and substance should also be segregated during storing, or purpose-built secure storage may also be required, right? So at least another storage should have a separate place where they should store all items. Then also another point, the area should also be kept clean and tidy and should be rotational inspection. So most of the time should be inspected by the supervisor whether this place is clean and tidy, right? Then also wearing a sign should also be displayed where necessary, right? So wherever necessary, when there is a cleaning operation going on, it should talk about they should wear their PPE elements or equipment, right? Then we're talking about storage area. Storage area also should not be used for working activities, right? Staking material is also effective way to utilize this space, right? Then we're talking about violence at workplace. When we're talking about violence at workplace, the definition of violence at workplace, any incident which a person is abused, threats, assault in a circumstances related to their work. So this simply means that violence at workplace is not good, right? It's anything that any word that someone can use that can become an assault to another, right? We're talking about the risk factors, right? Risk factors says that worker must at risk will be those handling the high value of goods and cash, and those who are in contact with customers, clients, person outside the organization or co-worker under stress Other people at risk are lone workers, those wearing uniforms, and repeatedly authorities. In some cases, there may also be the risk of violence between employees in the same working force. So in other way to prevent this violence, right, there should be peace among workers, right? These are also threats to accidents or violation, right? Then control measures of violence. How we can control what are the control measures for violence in workplace, right? Employees should have access to the risks to workers and take steps to protect them from exposing to reasonable and foreseeable violence by eliminating the substitute, and minimize the high risk of situation. That is cash handling, right? How they can handle cash, because cash can lead to confusion, right? By improving public relation with their clients and providing information that people need. Also, then refusing access to potential violent people. We're talking about two distinct strategies that can be adopted. Number one, we're talking about preventing violence at a central office. This includes a zero tolerance policies and precautions of orphaned employee security staffs using the CCTV cameras and security doors between the public areas and the staffs, and areas minimize the squeeze and waiting time, and also making clear announcements about waiting time, right, and training for staffs, and providing good quality service and diffuse aggressions and screaming between staffs and public panic and alarms, and creating a pleasure environment. So this simply means that in preventing violence at a central office, like they should have a barrier between the staffs and the clients, right? They should always make a queue, right? They have a recent machine that can produce numbers, so people will have the token that this is my time, this is my time. So that one can reduce violence in every working place also, right? So those are measures, that are control measures that they can use also. Then we're talking about number two, which is preventing violence to workers and conducting home visits. This simply means that no lonely walking, right? No lonely walking in certain high risk areas. Keep record of past incidents and vetting customers. Visiting, logging with the supervisor pre and post visiting, telephone calls and trainings. That is working procedures, self-defense. Always have a means of communication. No visiting after dark or parking in a secure areas. Not carrying cash. So this simply means that you should have a specific procedures, right? A telephone calls, if you want to speak to another staff and all, it should be calls, and how they can transport their monies, how they can transport whatever sales they do or whatever equipment. So it will not lead to confusion, and it cannot lead to violence. At least they should protect the staffs and the clients. So there should be a legal procedures which to be followed, right? Then we're talking about substance misuse at work. When we're talking about substance misuse at work, substance which may be misused at work, including alcohol and legal or illegal drugs, right? So not should be using this one in the workplace. Effects of drugs and alcohol. Alcohol and drugs abuse working can also lead to a numbers of physicals, or that is sensors and impairments, and liver damage and psychological problem, and lack of awareness of danger, nearly high risks, and machine irritation and mood of swearing. What are the control strategy, right? they have to establish a clear drugs and alcohol policies which might contain the following: the rules and that is one, the rules and restriction access to alcohol in a workplace during the working hours, right? Then statutory legal requirements prohibit worker from being under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and non-statutory requirements set by the employer. Then the employer also should arrange for a random drugs and alcohol test that worker will be subjected to. Then employer also the rehabilitations and treatment program for worker if they are admitted to have a problem. Then also the employer should have a disciplinary procedures for those who refuse to assist or to be tested, or who fail a test. Then also provision of information and introduction and training to workers and supervisor and management, that is awareness to train them. These are what our procedures of drugs abuse, this is our training, this is what you should not do. Then we're talking about another topic, talking about safe movements of people in workplace. When we talk about safe movements of people in workplace, we're talking about hazard in workplace. What are the hazard in workplace? We're talking about slip, trips, and falls on the same level. So what is slip in this context? Slip hazard is smoothly the smooth floor or surface, right, polishing or wet that's contaminated. It can lead to fall, right? Fat and leaves, ice or frozen, right? Then what about trip? Trip hazard is uneven a loss of floor surface, breaking pavilion slab, trying cramps, and lead of electrical appliance, right? So also trip means that appliance can be trips, you know. Then also you can triple your foot come together, slip, yeah. Then fall also, a fall to a floor on the same levels may also lead to a broken bones, especially in the arm or wrist or ankle. And then fall from height. When someone fall from height, walking next to an unprotected edge, right, that's partly built scuffed fold, or by excavations, or on a fragile material above a drop, right? Then using access equipment and ladders and standing objects to reach the height, right? You should use legal like ladder, right, so you can prevent yourself from falling. Someone can hold it also, right? Then you are looking at collision with movement of vehicle which use the pedestal walkway or crossing point in a warehouse or a car park when walking adjacent to move a vehicle. We're talking about strike by movements, right? Strike by movements of flying or fall subjects.